Welcome back. You're now watching the political segment on The Weekend Show. From seeing governors decamp from one party to the other, to seeing the state of emergency, and now seeing the governor come out with the former governor, who is the FCT minister, to say some peace agreement has been brokered, to also the APC national chairman resigning just a day ago. It's been an interesting week of politics. It is political season as we gear towards the 2027 elections. How does this work to support the goals and the ambition and the dreams of the Nigerian masses? This is what we're always concerned about. How does this translate to the average Nigerian? Joining us to have this conversation, we have Chief Peter Ame, who is former national chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, an ex-2019 presidential candidate and national secretary for the CUPP. Welcome back to the Weekend Show, Chief.
Thank you for having me, Maluki.
And we also have Barrister Kola Alapini, who is an international human rights lawyer. Welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Thank you very much.
I'll start with you, Kola. We have seen in the past some people have lost their seats in the National Assembly because of the process in which they decamp from one place to the other. Now you have governors who are moving from one party to the other just because they want to guarantee their political future. But interestingly, just yesterday, and I'm sure we've all seen it, the video of Sim Fubara, the suspended governor of, well, his government was suspended, so I'll call him the suspended governor of Rivers State, and the former governor of Rivers State, the FCT minister, VK. And it's been said that there's been a peace agreement brokered and all is well. I actually watched both of them speak. However, it has been alleged, and I repeat, alleged, that one of the criteria for the peace agreement is for Sim Fubara not to run for re-election in 2027. Now, for a country where we just celebrated democracy Day, the president has been hailed for his democratic principles and tendencies, knowing that Rivers State was very vital in the last election to the president. What's your take on this as an analyst and a lawyer?
Oh, well, more of an analyst. It's about the political survival of the president. And when you tie that down with the APC chairman we were discussing earlier on with Chief Ame, when you tie that with Ganduje's resignation, abrupt resignation that came out of the blues, you can see that the political pot is being stirred. Number one, Fubara was, the gentleman, Governor Fubara, was very, I would say, uncalculating when it came to the debacle in River State. He was warned before he got there, famously, by Ayo Fayose. Initially, I think he was thinking more like a civil servant than a politician. He was accountant general to the governor, and he ought to have known how to manage his master, and he's failed woefully with that. Immediately he crossed the Rubicon with Wike. He should have gone all the way fighting, all guns blazing. And then he comes up with a contradictory statement, even when he was removed, by saying, oh, I don't even want to go there. Do you know what I want? Did you see the clips? One of the churches seems to be one of the places where they all drop their messages, you know. And then the peace thing. First, I think the president didn't handle it well. If he didn't want the thing to have blown out of proportion. And then eventually when he stepped in, he couldn't contain the issue because both parties went back to the battle lines and they were still fighting until the president now brought in the sole administrator. Maybe that has now shaken up Governor Fubara to see, hey, you know, and people will have spoken to him, you're going to lose all. There's nothing to lose. Because the man that you're fighting is in a formidable position than you are. He's the minister of the FCT and he has access to funds. The FCT was removed from TSA.
Really well from the FCT.
He's done very well. I think he's probably the best minister of FCT we've seen in the last 2 decades. You know, with all the innovations and the infrastructure that he has put into place. You might not like his politics, but you can't fault his deliverance. And then when you now tie that with what is happening with the APC chairman's position, with Ganduje resigning abruptly, we hear the former governor, Kwankwaso, is coming into the party. That tells you that the president is serious about Rivers State being the treasure base of the nation due to his oil wealth. He's serious about Kano for the high turnout of voters. Now, whether it's accurate or not is another question on its own. But Kano historically, Rivers State, and until recently, Lagos State, used to determine who becomes president of Nigeria. But the president lost in Lagos the last time. I'm sure he's going to ensure that doesn't happen again. The FCT has always been the scorecard for the incumbent. Historically, presidents lose the FCT. This is their backyard. And the residents of the FCT usually able to evaluate the president at close range, maybe for him closing the road to the airports and everything. Whenever he's going out of the country, they always inflict a damning result on the president. So in a nutshell, and a week is a long time in politics. Who will have envisaged all this happening last week, Saturday? So it will be interesting what will happen next week.
Chief Ame, it's interesting because both of you have been on this show and we've had this conversation, especially last year around the Democracy Day and Tinubu's 100 days in office to where we are now. There's been this conversation about a one-party system. I listened to the President's Democracy Day speech, which was 44 minutes, and the first 14, 15 minutes was spent on speaking about opposition and this one-party system. We've heard rumors of coalitions, and we've already seen some of them are already rising and some of them are falling. You've had a leadership position in a coalition before. Do you think, one, that what we have is the semblance of a one-party state at the moment, and two, do you think any new coalition can unseat the current administration?
Yes, I'm very confident that any new coalition can unseat the president for obvious reasons. You know, the president, like I've said on this show several times, is in very panic mode. They are all, you know, running around trying to see how they can, you know, put themselves back to the game for 2027 election. And they are really afraid of the coalition. Even just mere discussion of it, it shows they are really panicking over it. Look at what happened to Ganduje just yesterday. His last function was to go to visit the Niger State governor over Mokwa with his National Working Committee. And if you take on the surface, the report from the Daily Trust that said the chief security officer came to his house by 2 a.m. and asked him to resign, then you are looking at there's a level of panic, and there's this level to try to, you know, attract more opposition leaders to the party, and they are ready to give anything, ready to, you know, remove those who have been loyal to them. Look how loyal Ganduje was from the beginning of the campaign for the president to come in, up to this day that he was forcefully removed by a report that I've read this morning. So you can't say that there's no possibility of removing them. And we have a situation where instead of having Democrats in power, we have how they call it, emperocratic leadership today. Let me tell you the truth. The truth is the fact that the discussion between Wike and Fubara was not just an amicable decision. Fubara surrendered. You know, he surrendered because the onslaught from using state apparatus and all sort of authority, you know, to undermine his legitimate immunity that he enjoys under the Constitution by forcibly being removed from office. Look, these are the kind of democracy we have today that we should not be happy to have them. My brother here talked about Wike being the best minister because of the war. Look, maybe because of the band that plays at the venue where they do all this commissioning. Most of the project, if it's Apple Road, it was about 70% completion when they completed it. Which of the road? This AYA bridge, it was a minister in FCT that built it, the one of Bega. It was a minister in FCT.
But it took about 20 years to
complete
this project.
It did take
that duration.
This Asoko Road bridge, I was here when it was completed. I lived in Abacha Barracks. Nobody can tell me.
I mean, for the
whole of Gusape, no,
the Apo Asokoro one, yes.
The whole of Gusape, it was a minister that created it, Bala Mohammed. Gusape was a forest.
For completion.
It was completed under Bala Mohammed. That is why Gusape became an eyebrow area. People moved there. You know, Nigerians, we have this selective amnesia, and this, we easily forget the things that I've done in the past and then try to live in the present. The fact remains that the APC government have nothing to sell to Nigerians, have nothing to show as policy, you know, projection for what they've done. Today, you see the FDI, foreign direct the investment in Nigeria is at the lowest point since 1999. When in 2023 we had 1.83 billion. In 2024 we had 0.8 billion dollars. So we cannot have a situation where the economy is not delivering, when the politics is driven by high-handedness and some kind of strong arm twist, you know, to how politics should not be played in a democratic system, and then you expect that the people will just, you know, run after you when it comes to 2027. The way the opposition leaders today are organizing the coalition, it will take more than what he is doing today to try to force the national chairman to resign, to try to allow Fubara to surrender his political and authority given freely by the electorate of Rivers State. It will take more than that to win the 2027 election.
Chief, just to mention, you spoke about FDI, and that's not the crux of this conversation, but this government will argue that they've paid off a lot of their foreign debts which we owe, and the removal of subsidy. And we've been told that this country wouldn't have been able to last 6 months if they didn't remove the subsidies and the like. And so this government will beg to differ with you, but I hear you. Also, there's the conversation about the fact that there's the semblance of a global recession, and so this is affecting everybody. But coming back to, and you can speak to that when you answer, but coming back to the political system and party, there are also conversations about how you say the presidency is in panic mode of the vice president being replaced either by a northern Christian or someone else. What's your position about this? Do you still think that's panic mode, and do you think that doesn't speak to reward for loyalty?
There's no reward for loyalty when it comes to the current president. All he's looking at today, but there's no governance in place, and all he's looking at is how to win the 2027 election. This is the first time in the history of any administration since 1999 that politics is, you know, is triumphing over management of the economy heavily into his administration. We've been running, it has all been politics since the 2023 election ended. There's never been rest about the issues of how to be able to communicate with people, how to be able to communicate with Nigerians, and, you know, be able to communicate effectively. The statistics you rail out, what I told you today about FDI, you know, you can check the data from the cable index. You know, it's very clear that we're in a very bad situation. You talk about the first subsidy. I've spoken here several times on the issue of first subsidy. It is not as if anybody was not, people are going to remove first subsidy, but the hasty nature and the impromptu nature that the president took without proper plan and policy was the reason why Nigerian economic nosedived. That's the truth. You have a weak naira today, and you are not into production. You are not producing anything. You are not delivering for the Nigerian people. There's no job anywhere. When there's no foreign direct investment, how is the economy going to expand? When local investors are not even doing well, how is the economy going to? Without the expansion of the economy, without the economy being in a robust state like what we had under Jonathan, we had under Yar'Adua, we had under Obasanjo, you can never be able to have people living a comfortable life. Today, lives are a lot of Nigerians all over the country are going through the toughest period in their lives with the kind of economic disruption we are facing. It's man-made. If we had wanted to remove fuel subsidy, first, we start by, you know, trying to tackle corruption in the process. Second, we go out by trying to provide provisions that would have cushioned the effect of the subsidy removal. The cost of transportation destroyed the economy alone. Because when the president sat on that stage and declared that subsidy was gone, that evening, people were buying a liter of petrol for 600 and something naira. And that transportation also killed people who were working with any 100,000 naira, with any 150,000 naira, because their transportation from Massacre, like I've always said, to Asokoro increased to 1,000 naira, over 300%. So we have a challenge that if you have a policy all the time, and a policy framework that is not properly planned, that is all about talk, and without execution, you have a problem. All what is saving us today is that Dangote build a refinery. If not, Nigerians, a lot of us would have been running to Sudan and Niger for small work and Ghana. Today it's happening, but it would have been on a larger scale. But what we said, look, for politics, if the president really wants to get government working, sincerely, it's not difficult. You don't have to campaign. Nigerians are people who appreciate little seamless of governance. Nigerians will jump to the street and be clapping for you. You don't need all this propaganda on TV. You don't need people coming to do ceremony when the cost of commissioning is more than the cost of half the cost of the project. What you need is to deliver. When you deliver, you will see that Nigerians will be your own. They will be campaigning on behalf of the administration. It's happening in many states across Nigeria. You can go to Abia today and you will see people rejoicing that there's a governor, there's a representation of governance system in the state. So the issue the president has is that he has no proper advisor, and he has not shown competency enough to say, look, these are the challenges of this country. These are I'm tackling them, and then try to have a communication with communicate with Nigerians on the processes being taken. The president promised that in 4 years, if he can't provide electricity for Nigeria, it should not be voted. So has he provided that electricity for Nigeria? He hasn't. There's no plan towards achieving that objective. So the president more is concentrating on politics. Politics have never saved any government in power. It is the provision of basic amenities, of development for the people that save government in power.
That's a good place to leave it. Because of time, I'll let you respond, but you have 2 minutes now. And the reason why I say this is he mentioned something quite important. Besides infrastructure, teachers of public schools in the FCT have been on strike because the minimum wage, which was approved for 70,000 since April, hasn't been increased. Also, primary health care workers. And so when we talk about this, it comes down to the poorest of the poor and even the disappearing middle class in Nigeria. What's your advice to the government and Nigerians as we wrap this up?
Okay, fine. I would like to disagree with his opinion on the minister of the FCT because I think, and I still say, it was probably one of the best we've had in 2 decades. We've had 2 ministers in the last administration who completely went asleep. And you can see what the minister has done. Where is there? I'm not holding forte for him, but what we can see the changes, and I think Abuja people are happy. On the flip side, which is ironic, you now have this topic
Primary health care workers,
people have not been paid, the minimum wage and everything. I think that has to be addressed very quickly. I also agree with Chief regarding the careless statements, and I say careless in quotes, with emphasis, underlined, boldly, with the president's being inexperienced. Being a governor, the level of experience which you have and competence is different to being a president. Being a previous governor before out of office for like 16 years, gets to the podium and says, "Face subsidy is gone." And that plunged Nigeria, whether we liked it or not, plunged our country into the present crisis, which we are.
So what can this government do to fix this just because we...
Well, the government has to have a more humane phase, cut down on costs, stop telling us to tighten our belts without tightening theirs. Well, in and out of the country, the president sometimes, I think he has spent more time in France than even in Nigeria, but that's just an exaggeration. If Macron comes to Nigeria as often as the president does, he will be out of work. So, I mean, it doesn't disclose the reason why he keeps going to France. Some say it's health related and everything. And that's the essence of the spare tire, the vice president. The vice president is just...
Unfortunately, because of time,
it's just
I
like
have to wrap this up.
photo ops.
But gentlemen, will definitely be having people more often because the wheels are already rolling. This is election season. But it's most important that Nigerians understand from people like you and can hear your thoughts on things like this because it guides. But for the average Nigerian, you still have the right to vote, and voting still counts. This is all we can take on the political segment. I'll be handing over to Tenda, who will be leading us with the Entrepreneurship Spotlight.